And welcome to the Zodiac Lounge, your friendly neighborhood cancel-free speakeasy where anything goes and anybody can say anything and nobody gets canceled. And it is hot as hell in New York City. It is in the mid 90s. It feels like 102 or something, which does nothing to upset me because I lived in hotter climates and I actually love this weather. But I hope you are all doing okay. I hope you all have air conditioning and a drink. I got my beer. Maybe we'll do a little product placement for Goose Island IPA. Love this stuff. And I also have my filtered water because I'm really kind of keeping myself in as good shape as I can. So I usually start every broadcast with wait a minute, because there's something else I got to do live on YouTube. And there we go. So let's hope that's working. Oh no, girl, please. So anyway, here we are. And I usually start every show with a little 5 to 8 minute monologue, diatribe, rant, whatever you want to call it, about news from their world. Except that tonight, the whole show is dedicated to news from their world. And I got this idea the other day when I had a call from my darling co-host tonight, Kesia Brown, who requested an appointment, and we did her thing, did her reading, and then we just were catching up on a lot of things. And I thought, wow, she'd be a great guest. We met, I'm going to say several years ago because it probably is. There's like no time in the Anthony Central household, no sense of time anyway, or linear time at least. But I feel like I've never not known Keisha. And she's a brilliant woman and on the cusp of making an enormous career change that I think is really exciting. But I'll let her tell you all about that. So we have a lot of things that we're going to be discussing tonight. If I seem like I'm hesitating, it's because I am doing everything tonight. My usual host and partner in crime, Scott Harney, is in Boston. And so I'm doing this solo, which means that I have to keep an eye on the door. I got to keep an eye on chat. Couple of reminders I'd like to ask you to participate in is please mute your mic when you're not, when you're not speaking to us. You can keep your camera on or off. I prefer on because I like seeing happy smiling faces instead of little gray squares with your name in it, but that's up to you. Consider chat to be like speaking out loud. So I will keep an eye on the chat line. And if anybody's too shy to come on camera, either with audio only or audio and video, I will keep an eye there and I will communicate your questions to Keisha and myself. Um, and I think that anything goes here, as I said, you don't have to worry about, there's no language restrictions. You want to flash yourself buck naked, I'm not going to throw you out. The only thing I'm going to throw you out for is being rude or abusive to another guest or to either of the hosts. That's when the wrath of Anthony becomes unleashed. So, we're going to be discussing a lot of topics tonight: alternative spirituality, UFOs, are they coming or going? Race relations in America. We've been constantly badgered to have this conversation, and it never seems to happen. It just seems, I mean, everything I've gotten out of it so far is that anybody with white skin is an oppressor and anybody with any color other than white is a victim. And that's not true or fair to either group or any group, because I'm not going to lump them into white and non-white. That seems a bit divisive to me. We're going to talk about COVID restrictions and how effective were they and how straight up were they, because we have varying restrictions and degrees of restriction in many states, different states. Vaccinations, what's the deal with that? How do we all feel about it? What are we doing about it? And also the role that the media plays in the vaccination controversy, which unfortunately it's become a controversy. And we're going to talk about gender fluidity and some things that are happening in our country about gender and sports, and you know where I'm going with that one. So if you know anything about me, there is no sacred cow that is not worth turning into a damn good hamburger. And third rails are something that I will touch with my tongue just to make sure that there's a strong connection. So, with all of that aside, I am going to introduce you to my wonderful guest and co host tonight, Keisha Brown.
Hi everyone.
Hey, you.
How I'm happy to be here.
Me too. Um, so, wait a minute, because I got to play with all this stuff. I got to pin myself and I got to pin you. And there we go. So, Keisha, tell us about yourself before we start ripping everything to shreds.
As we do so well.
Oh, we
I
do.
am, oh yeah, I am Keisha Brown. I am an attorney by trade. And I suppose a budding healer and empowerment coach. Now I'm transitioning from more formal legal practice to, I would see my work as maybe helping people navigate the higher laws, not our written laws,
Okay.
particularly their own soul contracts of why they came on this planet, to help them navigate how to get back on the path and remember who they are before they got confused navigating the things that we'll be talking about today.
Mm-hmm.
Because we come into this planet with a plan, and then you're told, you're a black girl, you can't do that. Oh, you're a little gay boy, you can't do that. And what does black mean? What does gay mean? All of these things are human constructs. They are not, we are not of that. We are from someplace different. I am a native New Orleanian and a proud New
Eh,
Orleanian. Yeah. Although I'm like southeastern Louisianian because like New Orleans and the rest of Louisiana is a little bit different.
it's
And
kind
I
of
think
like
I'm a,
England. There's London and
yes,
then there's the rest of England.
right, right. And I'm a country girl at heart. Only a city girl a little bit. Like I do like to be wined and dined, but I also I also love my trees. So I'm excited to talk about that too. So yeah, I'm happy to be here. That's me in a nutshell.
Cool. I remember when we first met, you were still in law school at
Mhm.
UPenn. And as the years have gone on since then, and we've stayed in touch and we've both sort of ventured into our lives and the tributaries of our respective journeys, would it be
Mhm.
fair to say that you're kind of like a reluctant lawyer at this point?
Recovering. Recovering. I told Alex earlier that it feels like I'm in rehab from working too much
Uh,
and thinking too much.
uh Maybe we could start a 12-step program
Yeah.
for professionals that want to
Yeah.
step out of the BS box that they've been shoved
Yeah.
into because you saw a lot. Can you tell us a little bit about, I mean, if anything is off the table, you're going to have to tell me because we didn't have a prep
Nothing's
conversation.
off
We were
the
just
table.
BSing. Okay, so you
Yeah.
worked in DC.
Yes.
Okay. And it sounded to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, and
Mhm.
inform further if I'm wrong or right. It sounded to me that you got to see how the sausage is made in your own industry.
Yes.
And can you tell us a little bit about that and how you responded to it?
Right. So I'll say this. I thought that I went to law school to help people like my mom who was being discriminated against at her job, and I'm like, I can be her lawyer. I stepped on that path, and coming full circle, I realized, oh, I'm here to speak up for myself, right?
Mhm.
Just to live my life in a way that I can take care of myself and my family and also be in control over like my day to day. Basically to not be a slave, right? To be a
Mhm.
free person. Um, I went into the belly of the beast. I worked in employment law If
Wow.
you want to see how American society is being, people look at criminal law, people look at immigration law, and obviously there's different parts of the law that have a real effect on families. But the part of the law that affects everyone in their livelihood and sense of security is employment law. And people really sleep on that.
Really?
It's really like I wanted to work for an organization that worked on employment discrimination policies and racial justice. They don't exist. They
Really?
don't
We're told that
exist.
they are. That's
No, no. The
interesting.
people working on employment discrimination law are working for profit. And
Ah,
you know what that means.
sure do.
So our legal rights as employees have been eroded over the decades
Hmm.
because the people working on that are just concerned with making money.
So, okay, so basically keep everybody where they are. They'll come to me, the employment lawyer, to change their life,
Right,
and I'll just sort of get a
right,
nice little fee out of this. And
right.
wow.
And I have worked on every side. I've worked in-house at a large corporation. I worked for several dozens of corporations on the management side at the top employment law firms.
Mhm.
I worked at the top labor law firm on the employee side, and the people that I've met in areas where I was like, oh, well, this is a civil rights firm. So of course they want to help people. It every step of the way, I was like, oh, these are the people who want to help people. Maybe these are the people that are going to, I don't know, work from the inside. Like, no,
Mhm.
I was
Yeah.
the only one coming in with the intention of helping people.
But don't they have to show some kind of results in order to remain funded and credible and have
Well,
people
let me
continue to
tell you
believe in
about
them?
the funders.
Okay. Okay. No, do. Do. I
The
love this.
fund,
We're going
the
to put a match to
funders,
everything, girl.
the like for nonprofits or even for civil rights firms, there's
Hmm.
such a low bar for helping people because the judges of the helping people are the elite. And no matter what side of the spectrum, conservative or liberal, if you're an elite that has inherited a lot of money, there's the same ethos of what can we do to make sure we keep our money. So it doesn't matter who they vote for.
Right. Yeah. I think we're all finding that out now over the
Yeah,
past few years. It's like, okay, this is a bunch of bullshit. So
right.
now what?
Right, right, right.
Yeah. And
And
that's
we
how,
have,
go ahead. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah. What I caution people because it's very hard to look at the truth
Uh,
and also still feel empowered because you're like, well, shit, like what do I do?
yeah.
That's why I am on my own journey of truth telling
Hmm.
and exploring my own empowerment to teach it to other people.
Hmm.
Because you know what they can't do? Make us work.
Yeah.
That is illegal.
Right. But it's apparently not illegal to keep us from working.
Uh-huh.
So,
Uh-huh. And there's always when you have people who think that they are helping but are not helping, there is an opening to tell them the truth about how they're hurting you in ways that I think people are uncomfortable practicing because there are certain rules to quote unquote being professional.
mhm.
There's certain roles that you go into in a workplace of how you're supposed to be. When you start disrupting that from a grounded place, from a place of authenticity, from a knowing place of empowerment, they can't touch you. It's pretty magical.
Right, but they can harm you. I mean
Oh
the
yeah,
people,
the harm
yeah.
is real. The harm is real, but the harm happens regardless.
The harm depends on are you willing to continue working in a
Right,
bogus framework and because I'm the
right.
kind of person I have put a match to so many things. I once I had a job interview, and the more, that every follow-up interview, I was seeing more and more that I hated about what I was going to be doing.
Mhm.
And it was only for a 6-month consultancy because this is one of the reasons that I'm self-employed. It always have been, always will be. It's like I cannot put up with that. And I got all the way up to the COO. He was
Mm,
my final, and they were just raring to have me going. And he said to me, what is your best quality and what is your worst quality? And I says, well, my best quality and my worst quality are the same thing. He says, what's that? And I said, um, my honesty. And he goes, well, I think honesty is a great asset. And I said, I don't give a fuck what you think. You see how that works now?
mhm.
Because there was no way that I was going to go into that when I was told how I was going to have to screw over people that
Right.
that were really being misled and misrepresented. It was just a horrible thing. Um, and it affected me. It shook me down to my deepest core beliefs,
Mhm.
which is bringing me to one of the first topics that we want to discuss, and that is alternative spirituality. I
Mhm.
was raised Roman Catholic. What about you?
Roman Catholic.
Okay. And did you have any experiences with the church or how that you observed in law or anything, or even not within law, but did you have any experiences that made you question why you would continue to follow those rules?
Right. So I went to Catholic school all my life. I went to Catholic nursery, grade school, and high school.
Uh-huh.
And my mom was a nun,
Really?
actually. Mm-hmm.
Uh,
she was a
she got
nun.
some explaining to do.
She left the
Okay.
nunnery. And I didn't find out until recently in adulthood just how traumatic that experience was for her
Wow.
to be a nun. She was a nun in the first all Black order from New Orleans because there's such a large Black Catholic community there.
Okay.
It was started by now Saint Henriette DeLille, if anyone is curious to look her up. And she experienced some pretty abusive things, including being given quote unquote medicine that was actually birth control pills.
Get out of here.
Mm-mm, yeah, yeah, yeah. And she refused to take it. Her and a friend of hers in the nunnery figured out what was going on and refused to take it.
Mhm.
But the way she describes it, I don't know how it was different from being in an insane asylum. That's what it sounded like to me.
So were they called like anti-vaxxers or something like that because they didn't want to take something that
I guess, I don't know how long of a time period where she had to hide this stuff, but
uh-huh.
I don't know if they ever found out. She did get chastised a
Okay.
lot of extra prayers because she did things like sneak out and she went shopping. She was corresponding with a young man that she met before she became a nun.
That's good though. You got to keep
Good for her.
sane. How old was
And
she when she left?
right out of high school. So
So
she was
she
18.
so she left the convent when she was 18 or entered the
She
convent?
entered at 18.
Uh,
She left in her like 23 or
Oh,
so.
thank God.
So she was, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And she said that the one person who stayed out of her class, her personality completely changed.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Wow.
yeah, yeah. We have a deep relationship with the Catholic Church.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
there's the Catholic Church and there's Christianity. There's the doctrine and
right,
there's the
right,
institution. I am
right,
completely against the institution. I think
right.
if you want to bring institutionalization to a religion, we should institutionalize some of the leaders and let
Mhm.
everybody else. Because even in the Bible, when they were talking about the Lord's Prayer, Jesus said, go into some quiet place in nature if you need to speak to my Father and say these words. He didn't say, come to a big ass building that collects all kinds of money and demands that you tithe 10% of whatever you make, or we're not going to educate your children, and just sit there powerless and let us drum stuff into your head. It
Right.
was more of a connection with nature and everything around us. Now, you've told me some of the ways that you have developed spiritually.
Mhm.
And I would love it if you would share that because we talked about your friends in the backyard.
Yeah, yeah. We have lots of tree friends. I don't know if folks can see, but we are in a very rural place compared to where we're coming out of. We moved from DC to Shepherdstown, West Virginia, and we love it here. It's a lot of nature. We went from every weekend looking for nature to, oh, it's in our backyard. We can just walk around.
Yeah, all you got to do
And
is walk out the door.
exactly. And the morning we're greeted by the birds and I look up and I'm like, oh, there's a heron, there's an eagle. It's really neat. And I grew up in a city because in New Orleans, and people think about New Orleans, if you haven't visited, it's not really city-like. There's trees everywhere.
Mhm.
It's not like a concrete jungle. There's a downtown, but most of the city is houses and a lot of trees.
Yeah, but the
Right.
downtown's kind of tame too. The
Yeah,
downtown, you can still feel nature there. Yeah.
right, right. And I think a lot of the feeling of nature isn't just the trees, it's the Mississippi.
Hmm.
Because you're on the Delta
Yeah.
and there's no escape from the Mississippi River. You
And
feel its
the
presence.
energy and power.
Right,
It's like that in my neighborhood with the Hudson. The Hudson is so powerful and so
right,
big and has such a strong live vibration that if I didn't have that, I don't know that I would be living in New York.
right.
It's like a block and a
And
half from me.
it's so it's very grounding
Hmm.
because you're being from a place like that, whether it's because you're near such a large river, but also hurricane season. So much of what it was to be growing up in that area was paying attention to nature
Hmm.
because you have to. There are
Yeah.
real consequences to
Oh,
ignoring.
yeah. Well, we saw that. We saw that
Right,
a
right.
while ago when Katrina
When
decided that
Hurricane
I'm going to teach you
Katrina,
all a lesson.
right. And to talk about spirituality, and I am still unpacking
Hmm.
this because I feel like the pandemic has brought up stuff that's helped me
Yes.
understand Katrina more deeply.
Okay.
But what I would tell people was it feels like when Katrina happened, I saw the face of God.
You saw the face of the devil too.
Exactly.
Yeah. You really got to see it firsthand.
I saw everything. It was like all my life, I think I'm walking on grounds and there's solid ground beneath me. And Katrina was like, oh no, there is no solid ground beneath you. And you're still walking.
Hmm.
So there are things going on, mysteries that are happening. Whatever you thought was real, no.
Hmm.
Like everything was just turned upside down. And it's taken a long time to really process what were those truths. And that includes the truth about workplaces and the truth about how the law really works
Hmm.
and what our government does and doesn't do,
Hmm.
and our power within these structures, and also the power of nature that can say, oh, humans, you can do all of this stuff. And I'm going to remind you who's boss.
Yeah. Yeah. I, yeah, we've all had those humbling moments.
Right,
But you've
right.
also started pursuing some studies in some areas that
I did.
would be considered contradictory to the
I
religion you were reared in. Do you want to talk about
Well,
that?
and yet not contradictory, because little did I know my grandma dabbled, both of my grandmas dabbled in the African spirituality religions because they
Uh-huh.
brought that with them.
Hmm.
And New Orleans is not only very Catholic, it's very Black, it's
Hmm.
very African.
Hmm.
So, if you go to New Orleans for Mardi Gras, especially in like neighborhoods like Treme or the Sixth Ward or the Seventh Ward, you're not just seeing Catholic traditions, you're seeing traditions right off of the boat from West Africa.
Hmm. And every
Um,
step of their
right,
convolution since they got here between voodoo and hoodoo and all those magical systems. I mean,
right.
it's a very rich mixture, and one doesn't overshadow the other down there. Up here in New York, there's a bit more of a line of distinction, and it's interesting because I've done a lot of traveling, and I always said that there's a belt right around the equator emanating above and beneath it. It's almost like a bandwidth where the
Mm-hmm.
borders are softer. the
Hmm.
borders between the seen and the unseen. The
Hmm.
borders between each world is softer, so things happen with more alacrity. And
Mm.
it's just seems to be a
Wow.
lot more flexible. So having grown up in that environment was probably doing you a lot of good. It
Right.
probably kept you sane when you were being scolded by the middle-aged menopausal virgins.
That is so interesting because I have not thought about it that way, but that's
Yeah,
true. That's true.
sure. You go. I mean, I found it in the Caribbean when I was living in the West
Right.
Indies. I found it in
Right.
Africa when I was visiting there.
Right.
Yeah, it's just amazing. So I think a lot of it has to do with electromagnetic fields
Uh,
and longitudinal and latitudinal lines, and they're just, and also maybe a proximity to the sun because there's more
right.
vibration, a very different vibration there because nothing really gets to die except like by natural causes. I mean, plants don't freeze to
Mhm.
death. They don't go into hibernation like they do in a temperate climate.
Right.
Everything just sort of stays and regenerates, and everything is just so much more fluid, so much more fluid. And I think that's why a lot of the results of ritual might manifest more impactfully in that area than anywhere else. Uh,
Right. Right.
so that
Huh.
was, so you're studying mediumship
Yes,
and
I'm currently studying mediumship. I've
mm,
been studying mediumship for the last 5-ish years. And it really started once I left litigation.
mhm,
It's been a slow crawl out of practicing law and not
mhm,
working with lawyers anymore in that way. And something about litigation, because litigation is basically going to war. And if you're a healer and you're a peacemaker, it's
mhm.
very disturbing to be in that
Yeah,
environment.
but a healer and a peacemaker can enter a war and wage war and win. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. I have very limited experience with the law, but I've been dragged in front of a few judges in my time, and there's probably going to be a few more times that that's going to
Right,
happen because I will
right,
never shut up. But what I observed, it seems that it doesn't matter who's right, who's wrong. It's not it's how the lawyers play the game, how they
right.
present themselves, who's
And
doing a
that,
better job of finding loopholes. And in the meantime,
right,
it's like, what about my crazy ass? I didn't go to law school.
right.
I spent all my money on this suit, Your Honor, so I can look respectable in front of you. My lawyer's getting like beat up by somebody pulling some bogus bullshit over there, and I'm going to lose because you judged how the game is played.
Well, that is where I struggled because I was good at it. And I was a little
Oh,
afraid
yeah?
because I would do witness interviews and people would spill their guts.
Uh-huh.
And if I'm representing a company, I have to remind the HR people, I'm not representing you, I'm representing your employer. It was
Mhm.
very hard to stay a good person.
Yeah, yeah, I
It was
bet.
hard to be moral,
I
and it was
bet.
hard to feel like I was on the right side. And I thought the right side was one thing, and it wasn't that, and then it wasn't this, and then it wasn't that. And I was like, whoa, can I be a good person and do this?
Yeah. It's like I spent
Um,
all this money on law school and now I'm finding out what a
right,
lawyer really is. And
right.
why did I could have bought shoes. I could maybe gone on
Like
a couple of cruises.
I told a girlfriend of mine, and I was in law school at the time, and she was like, I don't like this job I have. And I was like, well, you don't have law school loans like me. So why don't you just go somewhere and meditate on a mountain? Because that's what I would do if I wouldn't have these law school
Yeah,
loans.
really. And I think you know
Yeah,
now they know that they can wait. I mean, they scare you into
right,
walking towing their line. And it's like if you just want to
right,
say no, they're not going to do anything.
right,
Yeah, what you
right,
gonna do? Put me in jail? Then I'm never gonna. I wouldn't even have a salary for you to garnish if you want to play like that. So take me, bring me
right,
there.
right,
Yes, Your
right.
Honor, and I did, and I can't wait to go away. It's been so long since I've had a vacay.
Well, that's the thing.
UFOs. We got to go into UFOs. I want to
Oh,
hear.
let's do UFOs.
Yeah, you think they're coming or going? I think they're going. I think
I
they
think
saw the stupid on this planet, and they was like, "I am the fuck out of here." So
I
they ain't
have to
coming in. They're waving by.
I've always loved, as a kid, I've always loved space. I was always one of those people like, I'm gonna watch something about the cosmos. It always soothed me because I was like, whatever problems I have, remind myself how tiny the earth is and how tiny humans are.
Mhm.
Like, there's
Yeah.
so much more out there. And I know that there is other intelligent life.
Well,
It may not be physically close to us. Maybe it's another time or another dimension,
we
or
can
they
only
could be super
speculate
close.
on
We can
that.
only speculate.
Right.
But I feel like we are not at a place right now as humans to be a part of any galactic community. And if they know about us, they probably know that.
That's why
And
they're leaving.
maybe, right. And maybe they're like, let's just check back in and they can apply later, you
Hmm.
know.
Hmm. Because
Application denied. Please try
yeah,
again
exactly.
in
Yeah,
a
it was like
few
that
more.
interview that I had. We'll call you as soon as we have an opening. And it's like, yeah, the opening going to be a black hole. They're going to suck this planet right
Right.
into it because we got so
And
damn stupid by we did it to ourselves. Because you can probably see so many stars where you live right now as opposed to when you lived in DC.
right.
Now, every
And
one of those is a sun. And it has
right.
planets
Right.
revolving around it. What the hell makes some of these skeptics so
Right.
presumptuous to think that
Right.
there's
The
nothing but us?
hubris. The
Yeah.
hubris. And to get back to nature, the more you're in nature, the less you feel special in a good way.
Oh God,
Why would
yeah.
they want to talk to me? Wouldn't they want to talk to a tree?
Well,
Why,
probably,
like there's
but they probably want to talk to you
maybe
before
they
they
want to
want
talk
to
to
talk to one
me.
of our world leaders.
Oh, thank you, Anthony.
I'm
Wow.
serious. Hell, they
Oh.
talk to me drunk before they need to talk to like John Kerry or something like that. People that are
We were
not
just
playing the
talking
game.
about him earlier
People
today
that
or
are not
something.
disempowering other
Right,
humans are who they
right.
probably want to. That's why I'm saying all these sightings does not mean they're coming because we have cave paintings, we have
Right.
pyramid drawings. They have been here. I believe it. I
Yeah.
choose to believe it. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know for sure because I never met anybody from another planet, but I would be insane to think that we are it. So they are here. They have been here. Explain to me some of these. I mean, look at the Industrial Revolution. You think somebody just decided that they were going to wake up one day and invent a steam engine? No. Something
Wow.
influenced us to come up with that. Something
Right.
taught those ancient people how to build their temples and their pyramids, how to make batteries and really primitive computers that they found on archaeological sites from like the Middle Kingdom of Egypt.
Right. Well, you
There-
know what I have a question about?
What?
Humans have been around for a long time, but our recorded history is so relatively short. And I have questions like, what was happening before then?
Telepathy. I think it was telepathic.
Mm.
Okay. And then we
Mm.
enter, and I even wonder if time existed the way it does now in a linear where
Right.
hours, yeah, hours turn into days, turn into months, turn into years. It might have been cyclical time.
Right.
And then
Because
to
our
punish
perception
us,
of
they put us on
time is
that
so
linear
different.
treadmill
Wow.
because we did some really stupid shit.
I wouldn't
Every
be shocked.
every time the Hittites came over a hill and raped and pillaged your village, it's like, all right, you're down another rung on the on the ladder. And because I do believe that because just from working as a psychic for
Mhm.
more, I mean, 53 years of my 69,
Right.
um, I'm kind of on the fence. You know me. You know that I'm not
Hmm.
one of these woo-woo people that jump on everything. I'm very healthily skeptical,
Right.
almost cynical. But in my own academic pursuits and also in talking with my therapist,
Yeah.
um, she said, and I agree, that children from abusive homes usually have a lot more intuitive or psychic ability because we
Mhm.
had to. We
Right.
had to feel when the rage was going to come. So we had to either get the hell out of the way or figure out how we were going to respond. And if you think about it, way back in the day, if we were living in ancient Nippur, and then all of a
Mhm.
sudden danger was coming, somebody's going to telepathically let everybody know, batten down the hatches. They're
Right.
coming with their battle axes and they're going to
Right.
rape and pillage our entire civilization. So get ready, line up, get our military together, and defend ourselves. They didn't have cell phones. We couldn't send a group text,
Right.
but they all assembled. I mean, you see evidence of that in recorded history, how these uncanny assemblages of people showed up simultaneously to do stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do believe, and then I think what happened is we were punished for being stupid, and then they forced us to write everything down. And back then we had to chisel it into clay tablets, so it it wasn't as easy as texting or picking up like my wonderful like triple X fine pilot ballpoint pen where you can make the
Right.
tiniest little lines. So yeah, I do think that everything that some of our advances, like morphing from um, a an oral tradition
Hmm.
into a written one, we look at it as, oh my goodness, what a breakthrough. I think it was a punishment
Hmm.
because people got stupid and
Hmm.
our superiors wanted the receipts. So the only way they were going to get them is if you chiseled them in stone or wrote them on papyrus. But anyway, I'm not afraid of them. Are you? The UFOs and the people that are running them?
No, no, no.
You think they're bad or
And
good?
I I feel like there's no point in being afraid if
Yeah,
they're around and chilling because what am I gonna do about it?
exactly. But I think they're kind of like people. I think there's some good ones, some bad ones.
I would share one experience that I think is
Okay.
interesting. And I don't know what it was, but me and my mom had a dream the same night.
Hmm.
And she had a dream where it was aliens around her and they were complimenting her hair. And she was,
Really?
oh, it's so nice. And I had a dream that they were judging me. And I was like, they're so judgmental. And the next day, I was like, I had a weird dream. We're on the phone. She's like, me too. And we're sharing it. I was like,
Both
that's
surrounded by
interesting.
aliens, and they were judging you, and they tell your mother that her hair was
I was
fly,
like,
huh?
they must be doing an experiment.
Yeah, really. Well, does
Or
your
me and
mom
my
have hair
mom
like yours? Because
subconsciously.
your hair is fabulous. I love seeing your little boings. Is your mom's hair like yours?
Um, it would have been, oh, that's a whole other topic, Anthony. Black women and hair.
Yeah.
My hair, I didn't know what my hair looked like until a few years ago.
Well,
My hair was relaxed as a
uh-huh.
child, so chemically straightened.
Gotcha.
And that happened before I knew what my texture looked like. And I was really young. Like I had no choice. My
Yeah.
mom just did it. And I grew up in a place where hair politics is a real thing. People are like, is your hair, like straight enough? You have to look a certain way. And, the 90s, what can you do? The law school, this is where it started. I couldn't afford to get my hair done like that in law school. All my money was
Mhm.
going towards books and living.
Mhm.
And it slowly started growing out. And I was like, oh, okay. And I would try to get my hair curly before, but when it's chemically straightened, you can't
No,
really.
I worked in that business, so I know
Yeah,
I know the
yeah,
control damage that has to happen to break
yeah.
down the hydrogen and disulfide bonds.
Right. And it
Right.
changes how the hair looks and it gets brittle. Anyway, so I go to a law firm and I'm like, okay, well, now I have the money, but I know it's unhealthy to get the chemicals, so I'm just going to get a blowout.
Right.
I meet Alex and he's like, why do you keep spending money on getting your hair done? And then the pandemic happens and I'm like, wait,
It's like fuck my hair.
I have wash and go hair and I love my hair. I look better with the curly hair. What am I doing?
So it's
So,
interesting there. It's interesting. Lynn Pax said in chat, I'm assuming she meant the space people. They are into hair for their breeding program. They like it thick. Well, that lets me out because but you hear people, some people are afraid of them, some people, oh, they're coming to help us or they're coming to hurt us. Now, I was a guest in the audience of another Zoom event through
mhm,
Esoteric New York that Scott Harney hosted
mhm.
about this.
Oh,
And Lynn said she believes that they are the gods. And I kind of thought about that. It's like, you know what? Yeah. Because all these gods we wrote about, I mean, in ancient times, before we had morphed into monotheism.
Right.
There's good personalities, bad personality. Well, we judge them according to parameters that are not our own. They're imposed on us by society. Um, but you see all these spaceships coming down, and you read this stuff in the Bible about chariots of fire and people coming out and doing miracles and helping us out, and other people coming out and messing us up. So it wouldn't surprise me if temperamentally they were very much like us. And there were good guys and there were bad guys, and let them war it out. My feeling is that I'm like way uh too insignificant. This is the feeling that whenever I go down by the river, what you were saying before about being in
Right.
nature makes you feel so insignificant. It's like,
Right.
thank God I don't
Right.
mean so much, because I
Right.
get to really enjoy this.
Right.
Lynn also said there are different agendas within the different aliens. Hair shows vitality and energy,
Oh,
which might
yeah,
be interesting because that's
vitality.
also why a lot of the Jewish women in Germany in the 1930s and 40s would shave their heads to be unattractive to the people that were trying to breed them. I don't know. We're all going to find out someday when we bite the big one. So right now,
That's
we can
true.
safely say we don't know if they're coming. We don't know if they're going. We don't know if they're good. We don't know if they're bad. But what we do know is that they exist. Can we all agree on that?
I think so.
I think so. Even
Yeah.
the biggest
Yeah.
skeptic is going to say, well,
It's a large
maybe.
universe.
Yeah.
It's a large universe.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to chime in and take a shot at us or agree with us, you may. You can do it in chat, or you can go to the bottom of your screen and look for, I'm on a desktop, so I just have more with three dots. You can, that's not it. Reactions is what I'm looking for. And you can raise your hand in your Zoom window if you like, if you'd like to join us or not. Or just write in chat. And Lynn also says some are well intentioned and some are not. Um, you want to go into COVID
Sure.
restrictions, or do you want to talk about race in America?
Either one.
You
Either
pick.
one.
Go ahead, go for it. Bro, take the first shot. This is going to be fun
Well,
because we roll very nicely together.
my we do. We roll deep, as they
Yeah.
say. I'll start with COVID because that's the first thing that pops in my mind.
Okay.
And my husband's here too. Maybe he wants to share a bit of his
Okay.
experience. We both got COVID
What did
very
it feel
early
like?
on. Um, it felt for me, it felt like um, and I had never felt this feeling before. Everything, all of the energy in my body went to make me feel better. Like everything went to killing the virus.
Hmm.
And I've gotten the flu and colds, and I grew up with asthma. And I mean, I had a really bad stomach bug in Egypt that was like an actual bug that I needed a really
Hmm.
strong antibiotic for. So I've had some things,
Hmm.
and it was the first time I wondered if I could die of the flu.
Now, I had something the February that they finally admitted that it was here, because before that, we were being told,
Mm-hmm.
oh, just go downtown and celebrate Chinese New Year and all that stuff. Just don't
Nah.
eat bat soup. I had the most exhausting, it felt like a really bad cold. It was mostly in my head. I
Mm-hmm.
had this white mucus coming out of everything. If I wasn't sneezing it out, I was coughing it out. My poor cat
Mm-hmm.
was so indignant. I totally snotted him one morning.
Oh,
I was exhausted every minute of every day. I even called my doctor. I'm like, yo, do me a solid, hook me up with a
right.
Z pack. And he says, well, it's probably a virus. I'm like, hook me up with a Z pack. And he says, well, let it go on and see if it lasts more than a week. And I'm like, that's not you. That's not the you that I've known for like 20 some odd years. And it was
Right.
interesting. It was right around that time, but um, it took me about 10 days for all of the congestion to leave. Some in my chest, but it felt like upper chest, not my usual
Right.
bronchitis that was lower.
Right.
My whole head, I mean, if I had to get up to go to the John in the middle of the night, thinking about taking, walking the 15 feet from the bed to the bathroom was so exhausting. I had to take a nap. And it took
Mhm.
me about a month to get back to normal. Do you think that might have been COVID?
Yep, that's
Okay.
exactly what we got.
Okay.
That's exactly what we got.
So, according to all the medical stats, if you've had
Mm-hmm.
it and you've recovered, you are producing antibodies.
Mm-hmm.
And if we have an antibody, we can't catch it again.
Hopefully, who knows?
So, and then I
Yeah.
also read that if you got the vaccine, it would kill your antibodies. I'm just curious as to, and I'm not judging you. I mean, I think everybody needs to do what they believe because there's so much contradictory information out there. Nobody really
Right.
knows.
Right.
Um, why did you opt for a vaccination when you had antibodies?
I mean, I think we're gonna get to the race in America part because
Oh,
my
fuck. All right. No, I'm ready. I'm ready. Bring me
my
there.
first thought was like, I had a lot of thoughts.
Uh-huh.
Of course, it was a question of like, do I trust these people
Hmm.
to make a vaccine that's safe? And then I'm like, well, I already had COVID. And
Hmm.
whatever the vaccine does is not going to be that much worse likely.
Hmm.
And if it's that much worse, one shot or one or two shots won't do it. It's more of like if you keep doing something,
Hmm.
you gotta rethink it kind of thing. Also, it's also the energy you have about something, right?
Hmm.
Like if you're really afraid of it
Hmm.
and something is strongly telling you no, or
Hmm.
you have a strong
Hmm.
intuition. I didn't really have an intuition either way. And I opted to get it for practical purposes. For friend, I'm not a good liar. For friends who want to visit and they really want people to be vaccinated before they visit,
Gotcha.
it's just easier, that kind of thing. And I
Hmm.
really did check in with myself because, as you know, like, the health in the healthcare industry, I'm very familiar with how they can have other agendas, just like we were talking about with the law. I mean, the healthcare system's
Hmm.
also the same way. Um, but it wasn't a strong no. It wasn't a strong yes, but I had good reasons to lean to the yes.
Hmm.
Would I get it again? I don't know.
Okay.
If they said, "Oh, you have to get it once every year," I'd be like, "But do I need to get it once every year?"
Yeah, then is it really a vaccine?
Right, right, right. I
Yeah.
would I would probably think about it, as things go on. I mean, one lesson from Katrina, when things like this happen, always something changes forever. There is no like, oh, we're gonna get back to normal. That's
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
there are some things that will come back.
Hmm.
But I mean, we all went through a global trauma.
Right. Once you're traumatized, you cannot go back to
Right,
normal. You can go back
right.
to similar, but you're always going to be carrying either the immobilization, the emotional
Mhm.
immobilization, or the empowerment that you got from dealing
Right,
with that trauma. So nothing is going to be the same.
right,
Um,
right.
Lynn wants to know if, yes, you may. Lynn, you may speak without video. I will, because I know Lynn has some very strong feelings about this. Um, and let me see. Wait, you asked to unmute there. I've just asked her to unmute. Uh,
Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay. I got sick also with what I believe was COVID. And they're saying it was here in the States in December. Now they're admitting that. And
Mhm.
I was using homeopathy, so I wasn't sick that long. I had a fever about 24, 48 hours.
Hmm.
But what was interesting was that this stuff came out of my nose.
Hmm.
I've never seen anything like that before. It was a cross between plastic and fiberglass.
Exactly.
And
And it
this,
was opaque, right? Opaque white.
it was mostly, yes.
Yeah.
Whatever it was better out of my body than in my body.
Yes.
I was grateful for whatever it was that made me get rid of that. Also, I don't personally, If you look at the history of Pfizer, Johnson and Johnson, Moderna, they're all interrelated, and they have a history of producing drugs and knee parts, things like that, that kill people. And they do it. And if I have lots of references on this. They do it and they put out the drug knowing that it has harmful effects. And that's why they have to pay people so much money, because it was proven each time that they knew that there were harmful effects.
So they were assuming a percentage of collateral damage, which sort of goes along with any new drug, or was it, because the same thing was going on with AIDS drugs in the beginning of that epidemic.
Mm.
So do you think that they're just assuming a natural percentage of collateral damage, or do you think that there was something more nefarious behind it?
Oh, nefarious, totally.
Okay.
Totally nefarious. If they really believed that the vaccines were good for us, they would have made sure to make it impossible for us to sue them before
Wow.
giving it to everybody. And there are countries that don't want Gates and his vaccine agenda because the people that were vaccinated became ill. Gates is not a good man.
No, he's not planning to be a farmer either. I don't even want to get into what he's purchasing.
Yeah, yeah.
And
My
that's my
husband
point.
said no billionaire is a good man.
Well,
And also, talking about cancel culture, I tried to share an interview with Dr. Vinanda Shiva, the environmentalist in India,
yeah.
who's trying to help the farmers in India who are killing themselves because Gates is buying up all the farmland.
Mm.
And Facebook would not let me cross post the interview with Dr. Vinanda Shiva.
Wow.
So it's infiltrated all. And did you hear Chuck Schumer a little while ago laughing about the thought that oils could cure anything? So
Oils?
yes, oils.
Like cooking oil or
Like
aromatherapy oils or
oil, any kind of oil.
huh.
Because anything that's natural can't be patented.
Mm.
They can't make money on it.
Gotcha.
So they're trying to make it illegal.
Oh my
It's
God.
about money. And that's the difference between corporate science and independent science.
Yeah. Now, of the three vaccines that are out, Johnson and Johnson does not have that whole mRNA thing going on. Do either of you two ladies have any thoughts about that or anything to enlighten us?
As you said, everything's been contradicted so many times. It's like a
Gotcha.
spiral, keeps going around and around and around and becoming more and more confusing. I don't know what I think at this point about anything, except that I do not trust them.
Yeah. Well, I do know one thing. I don't know about the chemistry that, was implemented in developing these vaccines, but I do know a thing or two about viruses. And the fact that the way COVID replicates, it's more a retrovirus than a virus, um, which means that it comes in as RNA, and as it tries to replicate with your cell, there are certain antiretrovirals that will be like a thread in the zipper and then just let the unhealthy cells die off. And then your own T4s and T8s come in to continue defending you. And I was reading about a study that people that were taking reverse transcriptase drugs, retroviral, like things like Epivir, certainly the early AIDS drugs, were actually not showing any viral load. They were feeling that those kind of antiretrovirals and reverse transcriptase inhibitors were actually helping people stay healthier. And then I read an article from a French scientist who said that this was, let's see, we went into lockdown in March, and I believe this article came out in May of that year, that his assessment of it by taking it apart and putting it back together, that it was a combination of malaria and the HIV virus, which is maybe why hydroxychloroquine was successful in treating some, but then everything became so damn political that you
Mm,
suddenly had to take sides. And if you said, well, I want to give hydroxychloroquine a shot, you were called, what were they calling? A white supremacist Trump supporter
mm,
because he supported that drug. But there is clinical evidence that if it is dosed, milligrams per kilogram, it has to be dosed per your body weight and taken with other supplements, it's very effective. We've been using it for lupus and malaria for 60 years, and there have been no side effects that were detrimental to anybody. So I'm just getting really skeptical when big business, big pharma, and big politics all kind of come together and then start throwing these things out and making us chase in so many different directions that we're losing trust in any authority figure, any institution that we used to, not only used to trust, but have been paying through our tax dollars to support research and development. Forget research and development. How about just communication skills? Can we say the same thing for 2 weeks in a row without doing a 180 on it and confusing everybody? Because then nobody trusts anyone.
Until we get money out of politics, we shouldn't.
mm.
Well, do you think we can get money out of politics without imposing term limits?
We have to do that also.
Yeah, and I really don't see that coming in my lifetime, but I'm 70. So maybe some of you 20-year-olds out there, either, I don't know how old anybody is here in this Zoom meeting, but there are certainly people watching on YouTube. That might be interesting to
Protocols for
see what happens with that. So let's see, what are we going to start with now? Keisha, you said this was going to bring us to race in America. You want to do it?
Well, sure, sure. Where to even start with that? That's a big topic. I feel like it's threaded throughout everything, but that was
You spoke to me earlier about the media and Katrina.
mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so does that sort of segue into that topic
Yeah,
in some way?
I can start. I can definitely
Okay.
start there. Just to give folks context, when Katrina happened, I was going into my second year of college. Um, and the college that I attended, I went to Vassar, upstate New York. Well,
I wish I
the
had known that. We
Valley.
could have hung out, girl.
Oh yeah, we would have had a good
Yep.
time. I had just got my real tarot card deck. We could I would have learned a lot. We'd have a good time. But it was strange because I'm a little girl from New Orleans,
Hmm.
little girl. I mean, I'm in my late teens, like 19, 18 when
Hmm.
Katrina happened. I was very young. And Catholic school, and the Catholic school system in New Orleans is really like the public school system anywhere else. Like the Catholic Church is the institution
Hmm.
in New
Hmm.
Orleans. So humble background, no clue about anything. And I go to a school where most of the people around me went to boarding school. Their parents pay out of pocket for very expensive tuition and come from a very different world. So I took art history my first year, which unbeknownst to me, was probably the worst first class for me to take at Vassar. And it begins with everyone raise your hand if you've seen a European cathedral. Now, I wasn't even thinking that there's a European cathedral in New Orleans because I take that for granted. But I'm the only one that doesn't raise her hand. I'm like, all y'all been to Europe? Like, I don't know. Do people do that? Because we our
Also,
our
New
family.
Orleans, Louisiana is broken up into parishes,
Oh yeah,
right? Yeah.
parishes, and we had the money to go to Disney World, and that was exciting. And we went to Houston one year and in the beaches of Mississippi, but no, we did not go to Europe willy-nilly. The first time I went to Europe, it was on Vassar's dime. I was like, how can I get a trip?
Hmm.
So yeah, I got a couple of trips on Vassar's dime, but like I didn't have any of those experiences yet. So that's what I'm swimming in. Very different environment from where I grew up. And Katrina happens. And first of all, the media, yes. Black people, they're stealing food. White people, they found food. Like the
Really?
narratives were so, yeah, the narratives were so obvious. And to see who was dying, right? Like who was in the Superdome, who got shot by the police,
Hmm.
Black and brown people, who had the means to get out, mostly white people. And it's complicated. New Orleans also come from free people of color, mostly light skinned on my mom's side. They call themselves Black Creole people. They got out too. So there's all these dynamics, and the news didn't reflect at all my lived experience of being in
Hmm.
New Orleans and what I knew was happening on the ground. All the while, I'm in class with mostly white people, mostly very privileged people who are looking at me like I'm like a test case.
Well, you're
And
talking about privilege, like economically privileged, or do you believe
privileged
that
in
white
every
skin
sense.
is privilege?
Every sense of the word, economical, exposure, wealth. Because it's one thing to be rich. I went to school with some rich people, like their dad's a doctor or a lawyer,
Hmm.
but not old money,
Hmm.
like Mayflower money.
Hmm.
Like that's a whole other subset. And there in a bubble, there were people who I met, they were like, I've never met a Black person. You're the first Black person I've met in person,
I
not
should
on.
bring some of my boys up to Vassar. Bring some of
I'm
my
like,
side pieces up there. It's like,
oh, Anthony, it's fun. Yeah, I mean, it was a surreal. It was okay, and then also the Black people I did know at Vassar who were from similar
mhm.
upbringings that I was from, but not from New Orleans. They were very uncomfortable with how upset I was. Of course, I'm crying extemporaneously most of the day.
Your
Like I'm
family's from there.
yeah,
Your
our house
friends
had
are
6 feet
from
of
there. Your
water.
life was
Right.
from
My
there.
life was underwater.
Yeah, you're going
My
to be a
life
little
was
shook.
underwater. Right. And traumatized. And I had one friend that was able to really be present, but most people were just really freaked out. And in hindsight, we were all really young. So, I
Hmm.
mean, but also I felt betrayed by my own community. I felt very isolated. Everyone was talking about what was happening to my community, and I felt it very personally. And everyone around me, whether
Hmm.
it was because they were very privileged and had no idea, or they didn't want to feel that my community is just like their community, um they talked about in this abstract way that was like that made me feel very alone in the process.
I went through something similar after 9/11,
Mm,
when people who
mhm.
weren't from New York, who
Right,
were not going through that rubble every day, who
right.
did not see run out the minute the second building went down to see my neighbors coming off the subway covered in this
Mm,
white soot and just like shell shocked, like zombies.
right.
People talking about it that had no business saying a word, but they were getting their information from the news. And I am going to say one thing
Yeah.
about the news: it got so sloppy. This is where media is coming in. And now we're
Mm,
going to talk about the difference between disseminating information and propagandizing tragedies for some kind
right.
of either
Profit.
monetary or
Yeah.
influential profit. I don't know if you remember, but I loved it. I was watching, my heart was breaking for everybody in New Orleans because of the suffering, the death, the inequity, seeing these poor people on their rooftops. I wasn't
Mhm.
paying attention to the black and white thing. I saw devastation.
Yeah.
I came of age in the 1960s and I fought for equality. So maybe that makes my vision a little different than people that are older than me or younger than me.
Mhm.
Okay. But when
Mhm.
I saw Anderson Cooper in a rowboat talking about how everything was underwater, and then he steps out of the rowboat when he thought the camera was off and like the water was up to his shin, I was
Mhm.
like, this is some straight up bullshit here, right here. This right
You
here
know,
is
you know
fake.
who was not full of bullshit?
Who?
Sean Penn.
Really?
Sean Penn.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And I know I was like, whoa, because I mean, I've seen him in movies. I'm
Hmm.
like, he literally got there, hooked up with the Cajun Navy, plucked people out, and
Yep.
left.
Yeah.
There was no
You are there
this.
to rescue.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
was like, I'm coming in to help. All right, I helped.
I'm
And
out.
I was like,
Yeah.
he's a real one.
Yeah. He's not grandstanding. He's not
Right,
doing a nightly broadcast. He's not hyping it. He's not filling the air with all this BS that's
right,
misleading. And then again, it got very, very political because of George W. Bush.
right.
Um, and then that disastrous FEMA czar, what was his name?
Brownie.
Michael Brown. It's like, really? Heck of a job, Brownie, you know. And
No relation, hopefully.
I don't know, baby. You better you better check your ancestry
I
tree.
know.
And if
So
it
the
is,
Browns are one of those like we have no white people, and I'm like, well, we might be related to
yeah.
the Browns.
So we saw somebody who was put in a government position of great import
Mm,
because he was either a big donor or a big contributor, and that kind of makes me echo Lynn, who just said, we're not going to have anything straight up until money is out of politics.
mhm.
Because you have people doing things that they don't know what the hell they're doing. But
Right.
now what's interesting is that the narrative has seemed to change. The national, race baiting, race hating narrative. I was told by a server in one of my favorite restaurants right down the street.
Mhm.
Um, and this is somebody that's known me for years, and he's not black. Um, he's Latino, or
Mhm.
can I say Latinx or Latinx, or I don't know. I
Although
don't care
people
about
from
political
the
correctness.
community
No,
don't usually like that because it's not
nobody does.
pronounceable
I
in
know. But
Spanish. But
let's just say that he said to me, well, you're coming from a place of privilege. And I was like, excuse me? And he says, well, you're white. And I was like, well, my ass is still broke. You know, I take, you don't, if I had $1 for every time I said, you don't know my struggle, I could probably buy myself a cabinet
yeah,
position.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and it's just coming from a place where it's being drummed into people's heads that all white people, I'm going to tell everybody on YouTube and right here, and anybody who watches any replays, I do not have one shred of remorse for the color of my skin. And I don't think anybody should
Yeah.
have anything to be remorseful about the color of their skin. There are people of integrity and there are people who have none. And that
Right.
is across the gamut. And to turn around and take impressionable young black people, black men in particular, because there's some
Yeah.
issues with the street there, and convince them from an early age you are a victim and you will be nothing but a victim is more than tragic. I find it outrageous. I hope I'm not offending anybody. And if I am, I cannot take it back. I just think it's horrific to brainwash people into believing that they're just horrible or a victim because of
Right.
this. When I fought so hard, an entire generation fought and pressed. And yeah, we can all take exception with the way our politicians handle it. We're a little smarter now about politics than our politicians. We did get some good legislation out of it, but of course, there were little details and little loopholes
Mm-hmm.
um, that show if you really want to scratch beneath the surface, you will continue to find inequity. But to paint everybody with the same brush, I think is
That is
beyond divisive. I think it's disastrous. And that's
that is
why I think the
why.
UFOs are leaving.
Well, that is why I want to get into the self-empowerment work because
Hmm.
people need to clean up their own side of the street. That is
Hmm.
where there are phases to social change. Of course, there's like the protests and the mobilization. All of that is important to stir it up. But how we clean it up is
Hmm.
for us to sit with ourselves
Hmm.
in the mirror and really have healing happen on the individual level.
Hmm.
So I was in DC for the Obama election. I was in DC for the Trump election. and very close to everything. My apartment was in near the White House for all of that. So I saw the protests, everything else. And
Hmm.
one thing that I noticed, especially during the Women's Rights March, my impression was when I saw people, because I was going through my own personal, I'm showing up to work every day with my own civil rights struggle,
Hmm.
like just living. And my first thought was, what is the work that everyone is doing after they go back home? Because all I could think was, this is loud. My cat's like hiding under my bed. We're not getting any peace because there's so many people out here.
Hmm.
And like, I know the day-to-day struggle. And for the people who show up, do they know that this is not everything? Are you showing up for your coworkers who have less privilege than you? Are you showing up not just when you vote, but when you're talking to family members about who they're voting for or who they support? Like, are you showing up in the ways that feel hard?
Hmm.
Because there are people in society, of course, everyone can always take the easy way out. That's always an option. But for many of us, we don't have a choice. It's a harder choice to take the easy way out.
Hmm.
We have to do our individual work just to have a sense of confidence and self-safety, right? And that's not just a color thing. That's whatever, name that marginalized status, because it's really about intersectionality. There's so many parts of our identity, not just our color, our gender expression, sexual orientation, our religion, our where we grow up, the accent that you have or not have, how you move in the world, the job that you have, a lawyer versus a teacher, or a social worker, or a judge, like all of these things, the kind of car you drive, what kind of house you have. I mean, there's so many, so many
Hmm.
layers to this
Hmm.
of what gives us the shell that other people then judge.
And
And
we willingly judge ourselves by, we've been
right,
trained to do that.
right,
I
right.
remember being told people like you can't do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And I did it. It's like, well,
right,
hold my beer. You
right.
know? Yeah.
And that is how we move through the trauma. So one thing that I learned at Vassar was like one of those experiences. There were things about it that I really didn't like, but I loved my professors. I was
Hmm.
a philosophy professor. My
Hmm.
professors were like, "You're philosophers too," and that's how they treated us. And it was a very
Hmm.
free thinking,
Hmm.
nurturing, intellectually nurturing place.
Hmm.
And I studied a lot of critical race theory, and the thing that I keep remembering, because I wrote my senior thesis on Black feminist existentialism, and I
Hmm.
talked a lot about this in here. We, within all of us, we embody both the oppressed and the oppressor.
Hmm. That is everybody
That
of every race, every gender.
everyone,
Yeah.
every
Hmm.
human has
Right.
that.
We're a balance
That
of two opposites, and we
right,
have to find
right.
that medium.
That the other is in you.
Right.
Whatever you want to reject. And psychology has this too, the way we project on the
Oh,
people.
absolutely. The things that
Like,
piss you off are the things, the exact
right,
traits that you have.
right,
It's called a shadow. We try to deny
right,
it. We try to suppress it, and
right,
it'll become toxic if we don't embrace it and allow ourselves to be nourished by it. And the
right,
myth of the descent of Inanna, she discovers Erishkigal, who is her shadow. Because Jung retranslated that myth, a lot of people did, and it wasn't until she allowed herself to suckle at the breast of Erishkigal, her shadow side, that she was able to come to life, and she came up from the underworld, and she was much more pragmatic, and much more. She was neutral. Um, she was just so much more benevolent and so much more compassionate,
right,
because the things that we do take offense to or exception to are often, if we really want to put the lights on and look at ourselves square in the eye in the mirror, um, we embody those too. So we are all a mixture of those things, but by denying them,
right,
we are never able to resolve them.
right. So the way that we talk about race in America,
Mhm.
reminds me of when I see couples, including my parents,
Mhm.
bicker.
Mhm.
And like you're fighting over, I don't know, who ate the peanut butter, but you're not fighting over what you're really upset about.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What are we really talking about?
Hmm.
And I think what you're saying is what we're really talking about. And I
We're
want
talking about
all of
being
us,
judged
right? I
and
want
being
all of us to
trained to
move in
judge
that
ourselves,
direction.
maybe in a way
Right,
that's inauthentic.
right, right. And I like to share with you our first conversation. You brought up Inanna, and it changed
Really?
my life. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You let me know where I was on my journey.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Our
Yeah.
very first reading?
Hmm.
Wow. See what happens? I don't remember. I mean, I
Of
remember.
course you don't.
No, I
When
don't.
I give readings, I don't remember anything.
Right, because I'm half there and half here. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
how
yeah, yeah.
wonderful that that struck a chord.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That got me through. And I
I'm getting
started
chills, and
the shadow work.
so sweet of you to remind me of that. And thank you, because it makes me
Thank you.
realize that I'm not just, you know, reading tarot, that there
You're a
is
healer.
some impact. So I want to get to you though, because you're talking about empowerment, you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about coaching.
Yeah.
So how do you have to break down the false persona that your clients and potential clients have allowed themselves to believe in, or how do you? And I don't want you to give too much away because I want people to understand what you're doing and hopefully, start using
Yeah.
your service.
Yeah.
Um, is it a formula? Is it formulaic? Like, is there a initial period of deconstruction and then reconstruction, or
It really depends on where people are.
okay?
I have counseled people that are at decision points, and I think that's different. Like,
Hmm.
am I going to take this job? Should I leave this job? Like, kind of more of a yes or no.
Hmm.
And I can help give more context or to give them all of the information so they can make an informed decision.
Hmm.
And that's one thing. But then there are people who are like, I don't know anything anymore, like the tower card,
Yeah.
right? Everything has crumbled. Who am I, right? Something
Hmm.
fundamental has been
Hmm.
shaken loose.
Right.
Where I start is looking at a picture of yourself definitely under the age of 12, preferably 7, 8,
Hmm.
and reminding yourself of who you were and
Hmm.
talking to that person. When I did that for myself, my inner child told me, I just want to play.
Hmm.
It took me years to really work with that because I was very resistant. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? You just want to play. We have bills to pay.
Yeah.
Like that was my
Hmm.
and then I also had the opposite reaction, just crying.
Wow.
Just crying. So yeah, I was like, okay, well, that is interesting. That is why can't I play at work? What's going on
Why
with
can't
that?
work feel like play?
Right. What
Yeah.
responsibilities am I holding? Why am I holding extra responsibilities? Why can't I ask for help? Right? Why can't I relax? So that,
Hmm.
yeah.
So do people
And
come to you where when they're on the cusp of a career change, or are there people that want to stay in their career but just want to have a better, more positive experience?
so far, the people that I've helped are ready for a change, but might be afraid.
Okay.
Might not know where to go, and there might be a lot of self-blame happening. So one of my clients said, she was like, I knew I was stuck, but I didn't know how or why. And it was like you came and you did a spray can, like in the spy movies, they do the spray
Yeah.
can, you see the invisible, and you're like, she's
Uh,
like, oh, those are the barriers. So now I know how to maneuver
okay.
around.
Or how to
So it's kind of
incorporate them, how to accept
right,
them as part of my
right,
makeup. Okay, that's really so it's
right.
basically an integration of the public persona, which we usually use at work, and the
Mm-hmm.
true self, and how to bridge those.
Right,
Wow,
right,
that's
right.
really effective because but the word is called authentic. You are being your authentic self.
Yeah,
And you might
yeah.
You're going to take some shit if it makes sense to you, but you're
Mm-hmm.
not if there's no reason to. And you
Right.
never become seduced by your own creation of your public persona. I've seen that happen
Right.
to so many people that I counsel in both of
Yeah.
my practices. Um,
You can't have the ego drive the bus. The ego is not you.
yeah,
You can be
because
conscious of your persona
yeah,
and have it serve you and know what works and why it doesn't. I mean, I
exactly.
I had to go in and be like, well, how do I benefit from white privilege? I have free people of color who own slaves
Hmm.
in my lineage too,
Okay.
right? So like I may have the store side of my story that's like, the narrative we've all heard. They were slaves and they were freed and they were sharecroppers and all these
Hmm.
bad things happened. But even them, they found ways of empowerment too.
Hmm.
And the part of my family that on the surface looked more empowered were in some ways more disempowered because they tried to pass for white. I have family members who have passed for white
Hmm.
and don't talk to family members and have isolated themselves.
Really? Well, there
It's
was
a
an old movie with
oh,
Imitation of
oh,
Life.
Imitation of Life. The one
Yeah,
with Lana Turner is a classic.
yeah,
We gotta have
that
movie
is
night.
amazing. But how about we admit, or we agree
Right,
that there is privilege and
right.
there is victimization without
Mm-hmm.
making it white or black privilege or
It
white or
it's
black victims?
it's hard every time I talk about it because I want to use the words, but I want to give the words context. Like when I say black, there are sub conversations. Black doesn't mean one thing.
Hmm.
White doesn't mean one thing. So I have to tell
Exactly.
the story. My mom's side of the family, who was in New Orleans for generations. We have documentation going all the way back to the late 1700s,
Wow.
1800s. And they were free people of color.
Hmm.
And how did they become free? There was a woman who had a child. We don't know what it was consensual or not. We think to a guy who's a Jewish Ashkenazi Jewish person who came to New Orleans with a lot of money,
Hmm.
maybe some, I don't know, we had a lot of money flowing through New Orleans. Someone, I looked up the last name and there's some very aristocratic something family in Bavaria
Hmm.
that I might be
Okay.
related to.
Yike.
So she worked it out so that
Uh-huh.
she could have a cushier life, but like her descendants were people who did not want to be black. And eventually, once my great grandma met my great grandpa, who was from Kansas and a dark skinned man,
Hmm.
like her family was like, why are you with him? Like, why are you? Your babies aren't going to look a certain way. And that still happens in New Orleans. People who are like, I grew up in a place where I was not light skinned enough,
Hmm.
right? Like the girls who were lighter skinned got more of the guy attention, or I would get more attention than my friend who was darker skinned. I
Hmm.
mean, it's so,
Really?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh
Because
yeah,
I've read a lot of things about the history of New Orleans
yeah.
because on my mother's side of the family, there was a branch that had moved to Lafayette and
Mhm,
then into New Orleans, and they were recovering. I think they sold one of the family homes or something, but
mhm.
there was a piano that I inherited, and the bill of sale was there, and it was from Madame Lulu's House of Octoroons, and I'm like, what the hell
Oh
is an
yeah,
octoroon? And
yeah.
it turned out that in the 19th century,
Mm-hmm.
depending on, so an octoroon would be one
One
eighth
eighth.
black.
And
And
then
I'm
you have
like,
quadroon.
yeah, uh-huh.
There's
Yeah,
depending
yeah,
on there's a whole list.
yeah. And I know we've come far from there as a society. You're looking at me like maybe not. So no, but I'm
Yeah.
also, I'm not a rich old white person with that goes back to the Mayflower. So I don't understand my I wish if I have privilege, please tell me where it is. I would love to take advantage of it and relax a little. I'm seeing more of a socioeconomic faction.
It
People
it
that
is
have
com-
access to money, that have a lineage, are privileged. They don't have to. They have the greatest lawyers, and all the skeletons are still in the same closets.
I would say this, and I'm sure it's shifting because these things always shift as
Mhm,
society changes.
mhm,
The way that I've seen white privilege work, and again, I think it's a spectrum. I have access to white privilege because I have a Penn Law degree and a Vassar degree.
mhm.
I present myself in a certain way that,
But
you know,
that's educational. I'm not understanding the
exactly.
white and white privilege.
Well, it's not white. It's not like the color. Now we're
Okay.
really getting to the Americanism
Okay.
behind it.
Okay.
What people think of as successful American, which can be associated with whiteness. But there are white people, for instance, where we live, who actually have less access than I do because of the way they present themselves
Hmm.
as like, well, you're a country bumpkin or you're a Trump supporter and all this
Hmm.
other stuff. It gets very complicated. But on a more wherever you fall on the spectrum of however you want to call it, the more you are quote unquote privileged, the more likely you're given the benefit of the doubt by more people. That's really how it works. And it can be
So
very,
privilege has to do with education.
it's all of the things
Okay.
combined. And
Okay.
it's very circumstantial because we keep talking about this in a conversation text as if it's static.
Hmm.
But it really depends on the relationships you have with people in the
Right.
context. You know, whether or not you're at work, whether or not you're just walking on the street, whether or not you're with family members, or like it'll show up, you know, so walking around on the street and you're in a place that's over policed and the people in the neighborhood are mostly black and brown people and you're a white person walking around, you're probably not going to be hassled by the police as much, but maybe so, because maybe they're like, why are they in the neighborhood? Are they trying to get drugs? What's going on? I mean,
Well, I'll tell you
you
something.
know, like all sorts of things going
I
on.
live in Manhattan. Okay. I'm on the Upper
Mm-hmm.
West Side. I can go 2 subway stops and be in the heart of Harlem. And if
Mm-hmm.
I get off that train in the heart of Harlem and start walking around those streets, I have no privilege. If anything, I'm very easy to be attacked because of the color of my skin.
Right. And that's real too. And that's real
Right.
too.
So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There is privilege. I do not believe, I choose not to believe because adding up all these, the sum of all these facts that I'm kind of investigating is telling me that it's more socioeconomic and
Yeah.
educational. I've met people who um, can trace their roots back to the Mayflower, but they're like kind of like amateur hobos. you know?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I've met a few people like that at Vassar too. You
Right.
wouldn't know. Yeah.
So, and I get it. I get
Yeah.
it that the current narrative, the educational narrative, the media narrative, the political narrative is all about white privilege. But Chuck Schumer is privileged. Okay. I am not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. But we're both white.
Right. And I think also people don't understand how the systems work. Because
Right.
that is also what I teach in my coaching.
Okay.
There's the
Excellent.
part of your personality, like,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I shine a light on that. And then I also shine a light on how maybe you were set up to fail in your work environment.
Set up to fail or set ourselves up to fail.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Now, can you expand on
oh,
that a little bit? Because
oh wait.
I'm learning so much just
Right,
talking to you. I hope
right.
our guests don't mind
And my
because
and my husband's chiming in like he wants to talk for a minute, but
well,
yeah,
let
yeah,
them.
yeah. Do you have something coming up now? Okay.
Well, so my question is, you brought up the public persona,
Yeah.
right? And like in the subconscious, what does the public persona represent? It represents the center of power.
Right.
And so where does the center of power come from in this country, right? Who founded the institutions that provided the education that make the differences in socioeconomic class? And it's true that privilege is not distributed across race equally, and I mean, you and I as Italian Americans, we have a very traumatized and really fascinating trajectory of assimilation.
Hmm.
I've started to look into, we were, my family at least, had blackness in the Italian context
Hmm.
and had serf status, and were conflict refugees. We fled a wartime situation where
Right.
martial law was being declared,
Yeah.
and we could be shot on sight with the paperwork after the fact just saying this person is possibly a brigand insurrectionist, right? And
Hmm.
and so we came to America and we were offered this trajectory of assimilation to a white identity, right? Like when I mean, it doesn't matter what the papers in Ellis Island said, right? Like we were subject to all kinds of derogatory terms, just like all the other white
Yeah.
adjacent folks, the Irish when they came in, the
Hmm.
Germans when they came in. The idea of assimilation to whiteness is how close can you get to that subconscious public persona? How closely can you mirror that? And because of the color of our skin, it will always be easier for us to be perceived as closer to that and to receive the benefit of the doubt than someone on the same socioeconomic rung on the ladder as ourselves with a darker skin tone. And so it, like, whiteness for me is not about race. It's more the idea that the founding fathers that we deify and the robber barons that we heroize, who are now the billionaires that we look up to, and the capital that system of capital that they have that is based on dehumanizing people and all that, like, all of that is cannot historically be disconnected from the plantation economy, and it can't be disconnected from scientific racism. So that's the kind of whiteness that I want to talk about. And Kesia is really good at talking about the blackness of white people, the
Hmm.
blackness of Appalachians, the blackness of Italian Americans and Irish Americans and Jewish Americans and German Americans, and the blackness of Hispanic people, or the brownness of Hispanic people. It is that part of you that would not give you more respectability if you exude it in your public persona.
I hear what you're saying, but I still believe that if we can remove the color from privilege, we would probably be able to resolve this a lot quicker and a lot easier. I still see it as, degrees of education. Um, when you said public persona, how do I perceive my public persona? I'm a healer, okay? And I'm a business person. It's not about a white healer or a white business person. I have met Black people who are just as good or better at me and as a healer or a business person. I don't look at them as a Black healer or a Black business person. I do think that there's a lot of wood being thrown on the fire
Mm.
by our media and by our
Oh
politicians
yeah,
because there is an agenda to keep us
right. Separated.
almost at each other's throats because
Right.
that's easier to control us that
Right.
way.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, Anthony,
That's
because I,
just my, and I hope I'm not
I
offending anybody there,
know
but
this is how I feel. I feel
I'm a
like
serf. I am still
what
a serf. I will always be a
girl
serf.
the
But yeah, but
ditto.
you're
No,
authentic.
but you're authentic.
You're
Yeah.
authentic because you worked through your shit and you know how to show up, and you're not gaslighting yourself about what you're supposed to be.
Right.
And I feel
No,
like
I'm not.
a
And a
lot of
lot of
people
my
really.
work is empowering other people to
Right.
learn how to do that, inspiring them to do that, being a cheerleader with pom poms on the other side, cheering them on to cross the finish line. And it sounds like Keisha's new business is doing exactly that, which is what I love
Yeah.
about the
Yeah.
courage and you just assessed your whole life and you're like, fuck that. Here I
Yeah.
come. This is
Yeah.
what I have to contribute.
Right. And I think,
Yeah.
you know what you make, the point you make up, a lot of people want to spiritually bypass this.
Yes.
You didn't. You did your work, but some people want to skip over that stuff.
Yeah.
So I think Alex's point is folks got to look at what's really going on, but to get to the point to then not look at the color piece,
Mhm,
but you gotta do the work. You
mhm.
gotta like get through it.
Right, but I do think that we can do it a lot quicker, and I certainly wasn't
Right.
disagreeing
Oh
with
yeah.
either of you. It
Yeah.
was just we could do this and so much more expeditiously
Right.
and in a way where everybody can
Right.
benefit if we
Right.
stopped putting it through the prism of color.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just
Everybody needs to do genealogical work.
exactly,
I
but
think people need
but
to look into
I ain't
their
giving the
family
government my
history.
DNA. My DNA is probably all.
You don't
My,
need to.
honey,
You
I
don't
have
need to.
trap.
You're gonna come on the Italian heritage trip. We're already
Cool. Oh, good.
trying
We're
to figure
going.
out a
We're gonna do
heritage
it.
trip.
But I have been all around this world, and I bet you, I know for a fact that I have deposited my DNA in some way, shape, or form everywhere.
We love
So
you, Anthony.
ain't nobody gonna track me down. No, I need to. I'm old now. I just need to like waft, like if you throw a piece of paper off a building, it just wafts and then gently lands on the ground. Eventually, I'm in
Yeah,
that
yeah,
wafting stage, baby. I don't
yeah,
need nothing
yeah.
shaking me. I don't need kids coming from like Prague to say you, you are my dad. No, so I will do my family tree, but I will not submit DNA. I will accept that I am every race. I'll tell you right out of the gate, whether I am or not, I'm claiming it because I don't
Yeah.
want the scrutiny. I don't want the child support. I don't want the Molotov cocktails coming through my window by nobody that I might have banged in the south of France when I was drunk or something. I did all those things. I'm owning up to it, but
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm sorry to get so silly, but it's very easy for me to get silly with you. This is what I love about our conversations.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, we're gonna have to skip gender fluidity for
Well, it'll be there.
it will be there and
Yeah.
it will remain fluid and hopefully it'll get into its right mind. But I want to thank both you and Alex and everybody in our Zoom audience and everybody who's watching on YouTube. Um, and I learned a lot from listening to Kesia and exchanging with her and Alex and Lynn, who had some really interesting, valid points to contribute to this conversation. I wish more of you, would have stepped up, but that's fine. There's always going to be another time. But at that point, we're going on an hour and 40 minutes. We were supposed to be an hour. I adore you both. I thank you. Before I go though, if people want to contact you for coaching, how do they find you?
Right now you can email me at kesia.brown@gmail.com. That's Kesia.brown@gmail.com.
All right, Keisha.Brown. Nice if I could spell. And will you have a website coming up soon or
Yeah,
something else?
I
Cool.
am getting that together.
So please get a hold of Keisha. She is an amazing coach because, as you can see by listening to our conversation, she sees every aspect and helps you put it into a place of healthier balance. And then that's how you go on your way by accepting every single part of yourself and then revising or revisioning the next chapter of your own life story. And with that, I have to say goodnight to everybody. Keisha and Alex, I adore you both. I can't wait to come down there and play. I'm looking at your deck right now and I'm figuring out where I'm going to be hanging.
Please come.
I will. And I
Can't
hope
wait.
to see you soon. And thank everyone for joining us tonight. I hope there was some food for thought here for all of you. So, on that note, I am out. See you next week. I have no idea what's going to be going on, but it's going to be some fun.